It's the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast, where we talk about all things consensual non-monogamy, polyamory, open relationships, swinging, and how you can have secure and sexy relationships, no matter how you do them. Now here's your hosts, Tara and Andre.
Today we are talking about how much do I want to know?
As in don't ask, don't tell kind of things. When
Yeah.
we're coming into polyamory, how much I want to know about what's going on with my partner,
Exactly.
what's happening.
So from Don't Ask, Don't Tell,
Mhm.
DADT for short.
The military thing.
Yes, the military thing. But I understand now it's defunct, so that would be good. And I think you can be openly
I think so. Yeah.
gay.
Well, it depends, I guess, in whose army also.
That's
I don't know if
true.
you're in Russia, if they're going to accept it so much, or Poland. I mean, there's some places, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe in some armies it is more permissible.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the DADT, don't ask, don't
Yeah.
tell, originated in the military, right?
Yeah.
Because they had service people who were in there who might have been not straight,
Not heterosexual.
not intersexual, and they wanted to kind of bring them in, incorporate them, but didn't want to know about it, didn't want to ask.
Mhm. But I think this is the reason we're talking about this is because it's something that comes up in relationships all the time.
Mhm.
Like even in monogamous ones, like how much do you want to know? Do you want to know your partner is flirting with his colleague at
Or
work?
even past history. I have a straight couple that I'm working with, straight, not whatever. They don't want to know their partner's previous dating history. They find it intolerant.
Yeah. In fact, I was reading in Psychology Today, there's a University of California study which studied this.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know the extent to which they studied it and the impact, but it was talking about how much people don't want to know about
Mhm.
their partner's activities.
Mhm.
And I'm curious as to who they tested and if
Mhm.
they also tested the results of not knowing.
Sure.
But that's kind of what we're going to talk about. Because when people become non-monogamous, like if you already are, or if you're opening up an
Open relating,
existing
yeah.
relationship, this is something that often comes up.
Sure.
So, but before we get into that, we're super excited to let people know about is that we are opening up registration for our group program, Polyamory Mastery with TNA.
How to do it without getting into too much hot water.
Well, how did you learn all the things? Like there's a lot of questions people have. This is
Sure.
one of the things that we're talking about today is how much to know, what type of relationship style you want, how to deal with feelings of jealousy, how to
Right.
set up agreements that work. So if it's something that you're interested in, please message one of us and we will get you the details.
Yeah. And for people coming into it, or even if you've been into it for a while, it may at times seem almost like learning a new language, right? Like metamors and polycules and all kinds of things, and ideas around it, philosophy. So there's a lot to learn.
Yeah.
It's good to have this framework to guide people. So it's chock full of nuts, as they say.
Chock full of nuts, including these two nuts. Well, I think it's an interesting point because there's over 60 videos in the group.
Is it that much?
And sometimes we forget how far we've come in understanding the terms and that sort of thing. So we may bring up terms that are unfamiliar to you, and that's cool. Like everybody has a journey to go through, and we're always happy to help you with that.
And it's fun to learn. It's like when we, the course that we took where we were introduced to the GSERD, right? You want to say what GSERD stands for? It's an acronym for?
Gender, sexual, erotic, relational diversity.
Right. And to that, we might even add a couple of other spectrums as well. But it's that learning process, right? Opening up and becoming better acquainted, more aware.
So don't ask, don't
Knowledge is
tell might be a thing that people don't understand or are familiar with. They may be practicing it, but not know what it's called, as well as the different types of being polyamorous.
Right.
And also, like sometimes we talk about attachment styles. So there's those things. So,
But don't ask, don't tell in open relating, in polyamory, it is the idea that we are consenting to not knowing and not talking about, not telling about it, right?
well,
as opposed to just going at it and having your own affairs, your own things without telling your partner about it. They're not consenting to that. So in don't ask, don't tell, in open relating, ethically open relating, it's that we have this agreement towards the philosophy of it, towards the idea of our open relating. I don't necessarily want to know about all the details or all those other feelings that come to it.
Yeah, and I think when people are first opening up an existing monogamous relationship, or even starting something from scratch or beginning, it may seem that not knowing is a great way of exploring openness without having to know what the other person is doing, like kind of feel your emotions, understand the things. So you may choose a relationship style that allows you to do that exploring, but keeping your information to yourself. But I think, and while the short term, I think this can be a good gradual entry for people, I think in the long term, to be successful or to have more successful maybe
remains to be seen, but
in non-monogamy is when is that you're able to deal with your emotions and that you can speak about some information.
Yeah, so again, for me, it comes back to the idea of talking about the feelings of it and maybe not necessarily the details of the actions towards it, right? So I went on a date with you. You don't necessarily need to know which restaurant or what they were wearing or what sex acts we performed or things like that. But you might want to know some of the other concrete details, like, where are you going to be? Are you safe? How did you feel? Did you feel secure? Did you feel loved? Did you feel all these things, right?
Yeah.
Or how did you feel about it?
Yeah, and I think we're going to talk about some of these things. But in terms of don't ask, don't tell, like that same study I was reading about in Psychology Today, they were talking about people wanting, even monogamous relationships, to preserve their relationships, or what I like to preserve the picture they have of them. So I think that's interesting because you want to preserve something.
But when you preserve something, that doesn't it kind of restrict the evolution of it and change? Is it resistant to those things?
Yeah, because I mean, we're always changing. Even if we weren't polyamorous, I think our relationship changes over time, and what we want in those relationships changes over time. Which is why I love the comments that were in the group, and we're going to share some of those as we get further along about the post about how much do you want to know or share. So,
just thinking, like, don't ask, don't tell, don't talk. Like, don't talk about it.
Some people don't want to talk about it. There's just I sent out an email this morning. It was of Simon Cowell going like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Like, don't tell me. Don't tell me. Because what you don't hear might not hurt you.
Yes and no. But then your imagination can run wild. As you say, you might start filling in the blanks. But the thing is, I think one of the best ways to approach this is to have open communication. Communication. So if we don't ask, don't tell, don't talk, how are we going to go past those feelings? How are we going to go past our worst fantasies?
Yeah, because you may want to avoid those feelings, but you can't avoid them forever. And like you said, I was saying to a client recently, last week, is that when we choose not to hear about them, about their experiences, or at least the part about, like you said, how they feel about it, our brains do that fill in the blank thing, or choose your own adventure. And usually the adventure we choose is not always the best one, because we can create these fantastical stories about how amazing an opportunity our partner had with their partner, right? And so that's why I think in the long term, like you said, I feel it's important to explore those feelings. And I think this is the one thing that people learn as they get into polyamory or open relating, open relationships, swinging, any of those, is that, like you said, communication is super important, but we're not often taught how to communicate. Not necessarily, like how to communicate and how to listen, listen actively. But it's why I wanted to say this, because it's why, like, the first module, the first thing we take people through in our program is learning how to communicate and how to attune to your partner and be able to share and open communicate about things that are difficult, because it's a great skill.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. I don't remember any course that I ever took that was oriented about learning and listening and understanding.
Yeah, and practicing. And practicing, because it's a practice.
Sure is, yeah. And you might be resistant to it at first, right? You might not want to hear those things. It might be difficult to have to endure those feelings. But if we can talk about them and process them, then we might come to a different position, better understanding, and be able to be better integrated into the community.
I recently did this training on this attunement communication and this listening and this process where you listen back and forth, which is why I'm super excited to have it in the program. But what I loved about it was, and I was thinking like, well, what do you start with? And then they were saying in the training, it's like you start with the thing that you wanted to say and you want your partner to have your undivided attention.
Start with the big one.
Sure, like start with the thing that maybe you were not saying, and this is your opportunity. So that's the thing we're going to practice. So I'm super excited about that.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I wonder what comes to people's minds, what they're wanting to say that they might not have yet said.
I don't know. I don't know. Like, I'm sure there's things.
There's always something.
We hear it from the group. I hear it all the time. Like, I'm the person that goes through and lets everybody in the group, and you kindly are very honest in what you answer in the questions. And so many of you say, I have a hard time communicating my boundaries. I have a hard time expressing my needs and having them met and sticking to agreements, or, all these things. So Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So what to know and share and see. I added that one.
And see, yeah.
Yeah.
Makes me think of that song. Is it by James? About jealousy? I just can't look. It's killing me.
Oh, I don't know.
Some people, it's okay. Like I have the concept in my head that you're going to go with somebody else. That's fine. And we can even talk about it. That's fine. But if I see it, somehow it burns an image into my mind. So I don't want to see it.
I think sometimes seeing it is actually better.
Sometimes it demystifies it. It's like you take that grand fantasy, that big fear, that unknown boogeyman, and you see it, it's like, oh, that's all they're doing? Like, big deal, whatever. It's like,
Yeah. People who've been in the group know that some of our first forays were together. We did most things together as some
as many people do, it seems. A lot of people start off with like that male, female threesome, and then they go into couples, and then they go into
or going to
group,
clubs, and so not all, but that's how I got my introduction. Really, was watching you with other people, and it does stir some things. And I think at the beginning, I was like, there were certain times where I felt it really strongly, and other times I didn't. And you really have to sit with those feelings and emotions. But I think for myself, even now, seeing you engaging activities is exciting, and I feel more secure for some reason than when I make up the stories in my head.
But isn't it interesting how it shifted over time, right? How it might have gone from, an opportunity to be feeling insecure or fearful to now, if you feel more secure, it's like, yeah, wow, that's kind of cool, actually. Like, I'm digging that.
Yeah. I remember, I'm going to share something, if that's okay. I remember one of our first
things. It's not.
I don't know. Is it okay?
I don't know. I don't know what it's about, so how could I grant my consent?
I was going to share about our first time when someone slept over. Is that okay?
I don't see. I don't know what you're talking about, but let's hear it.
Well, you don't recall one of our earlier experiences with someone of the same name as me?
Oh, yes.
Yes. And how I felt about the sleepover. We decided we had some fun, we played and that sort of thing, and then we decided to have this person stay over. And so we slept in your bed all together in the queen size bed. And I tossed and turned all night.
Yeah, but you do that on a regular basis.
I do, but what was interesting about this is I was obsessing over the two of you sleeping and how, oh, look at them, how great. Like I created this entire dialogue and narrative around, oh, they're so satisfied and happy with each other that they're sleeping and enjoying, and here I am suffering.
And there I was, totally unaware of it, not tuned into it. I should have woken from my sleep to check in with you and see how you're doing.
I mean, how would you know?
Of
course you wouldn't know. But it was interesting that I created that entire story. And when you did find out about it, you were like, oh my God, like, what is it that was, what is it that is concerned? And then we talked about it, sort of thing. But I just think it was interesting how I completely, I was comfortable with the things as they were happening when we were awake. But as soon as you fell asleep, I created a whole story around what that meant. And then that you both were sleeping and I wasn't.
Right. And let me ask then, so the two of us are sleeping, you're awake, and you're creating the story. And then there's nothing to counter it. There's nothing to offset, to offer you another perspective, another point of view, right?
Yeah.
So we find the supporting evidence to increase those feelings very often, as opposed to saying, wait a second, like, am I being objective here? Am I being rational? Am I being fair? Am I, seeing the other side to this as well? Are my feelings facts?
Yes, exactly. And I think that happens a lot, particularly when people are dating separately and, your partner is coming home from a date, super excited and that sort of thing. And you see that and then you go, ooh, then you create an even bigger story, potentially.
Interesting that you would make the distinction between dating separately. I wonder for some people if it might be just the opposite. If dating together and seeing the other person, you see me, we've been together for 5,000 years, and I look at you in this still wonderful way, but then this other person comes on the scene that's like, wow, like that new energy, right? And does that make it even more difficult in some ways? Who knows?
Yeah, I think it differs. And so,
welcome to
post any comments.
It differs, but the only way to know is by communicating. Right, saying how we feel about it, finding a way to introduce it.
So what are the kinds of things that people know and share? So let's go through some of them, because I think it's important to talk about those things.
Yeah,
so
sure.
There's the detail side of things. So we did talk about a few things, like when. So one of the agreements we have is around giving notice of what's happening.
In a practical sense, like a calendar.
I'm going to be going out in a couple of days. And I think our practice is that we give each other as much notice as possible.
As soon as you know about it, kind of put it on the calendar, let the other person know, next Thursday I've got a coffee date or I'm going out Thursday night. So,
Yeah. Exactly. So what were you say?
I was wondering if it's a good point to mention about hierarchy. The idea that some people have this idea that
Yes, sure.
The calendar exists, and if there's conflict, they will default to their ladder of hierarchy, right? So it says, well, you're my nesting partner, or you're this, that, or the other thing, so I will kind of prioritize our relationship. And other people say, well, no, like, I'm a relationship anarchist, and I don't believe in that hierarchy. And it's like, what's the spirit of it? And I come to you that way. So it's something to consider as well.
Yeah. And it depends on whatever agreement you have with your partners and who do you have to tell? Like, who do you have to give notice to?
Right.
I think the way we do is we, if I understand frankly, our agreement is based on consideration. So we will give the other as much notice as possible. I might consult you and say, did we have something already planned on this date? I think you would say that too. And then we just recently got a big paper calendar that's now on the wall in the laundry room. Old school to mark things down because we were forgetting, right?
And it gets busy too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got something already planned. And it's like, well, is that there?
Yeah. So the when. So how much notice do you give? Do you get approval? Which is another thing. Some people actually seek approval. That is part of their rules of their relationship. Now, this is one where...
And there's some interesting rules out there, too.
Yeah, I think if you're practicing open communication and consensual non-monogamy, I might suggest that getting approval from another might be too high of a hierarchy, because then it takes away other people's rights in some ways.
Some people want to grant their rights to the other person.
Yeah.
They like to have that containment, that feeling that somebody else is there. But we'd only know, again, if we're communicating openly.
Yeah, and I think that's fine if people are comfortable with that and open to that. But then I guess the question is, what do you do if the person says no?
Be careful what you ask for.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Next would be where. Right?
Where?
Knowing about location.
Yeah. So do you want to know exactly like, I'm going on a date to the Darling, on the corner.
Oh, so that way I don't go there as well?
That might be it. But also like, where will you be going? How long are you going to be?
Yeah. What if I don't know those things? Or what if it's like, okay, I said I was going to meet at the Darling and the date goes really well. And all of a sudden we get invited back to their place or we go get a hotel. Like, how does it open the door for spontaneity?
Well, it can, but I think those are, again, things that you want to talk about in advance. And, if it should go that way, what do you do? It's like, okay, well, I plan to meet them at a restaurant. And for me, I don't really care where it is, unless it's somewhere where I might happen to go to. And I wouldn't want to interrupt you or make things uncomfortable or that sort of thing. But you might have agreements around, you wouldn't want to worry. So if I was out on a date and I said, yeah, I'll probably be home around, midnight or whatever it is, and then I wasn't.
Yeah, it's like 3 o'clock, then I'm starting to worry.
Then you're starting to worry. So then there might be ways of communicating and setting up agreements that you have to let the other know what you're doing. Maybe not seeking permission, but just letting them know, advising them.
Yeah, so that reminds me about the pre, during, and after care, right? And how we might have an agreement that says, well, we're going to check in with each other before the date happens. And then during the date, you might send like a quick text just saying like, yeah, I'm here, like everything's cool, whatever, there's a TV dinner in the fridge for you, whatever it is, and go at it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So the where can be specific details. It could be giving someone, a friend or your partner, that person's phone number if it's somewhere new. But, always I think it's good practice to meet somewhere public first, safety, that sort of thing. So then one of the other details is around intimate and sexual details. Yeah. So here's another one where people get really excited to hear about what their partner's doing, while others are like, I just don't want to know. I think you were telling me earlier, and then some people have some rules around what those can be. If they're in a more hierarchical relationship, maybe you're married with kids or that sort of thing, things you can't do.
No, I was just telling you about a couple that I know that they're basically very open with each other, do all kinds of things, have very few rules, except they have anything but rule.
Anything but.
Yeah. It's a male presenting figure and a female presenting figure. And his one rule to her is she can do anything but play. That area is reserved for him. Interesting.
Yeah. So those are the kinds of things that people do. So intimate and sexual details. But how much you want to know and how much do you want to share? Sure. And then I think there's also...
And how is it said also?
Oh, how is it said? Yeah.
Right. So are you saying it like in a kind of grand setting, like, oh my God, like, we had such a great time. Are you wanting to make the other person jealous? Perhaps you are. Or are you wanting to buffer it and minimize it, thinking that you're not wanting to bruise their ego in some way? If they were to hear this information, it might make them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. No, exactly. Well, some people really like to hear the details.
Some people want to know all the juicy details. And did you take pictures? Send me pictures. I want to see all that stuff. Bring me back their panties, whatever it is.
But then there's also the issue around privacy around those things.
Well, so that another couple that I'm working with, one person in the relationship is wanting to meet their metamor. And the partner is like, no, like, this is something that I do in private with them. And I would not feel comfortable asking them to meet you. They've never brought it up. And my impression is that they're not going to want to meet you or our kids or our grandparents or any of that stuff. They really just want to have this between us. Or maybe that's the person saying that they don't want that. But the point is, it might always be the same match, right?
Exactly. Like some people really feel it's important that you have to know the metamors or that you have to be friends, you have to like them. Because I know lots of people I've talked to and people who come into the group, they're like, oh, I don't like my partner's partner. And then what do you do, right? Oh,
right. So a metamor, thank you. You just got a great comment here about metamors. So a metamor is if Tara and I were a couple and she was dating somebody, that somebody that she's dating would be my metamor.
Yes. It's your partner's partner.
Yeah.
So to speak. And Hope makes a good point, and this is exactly what I was just going to get to. And how much does the other person agree you'll tell? So this idea about consent and privacy, it doesn't just extend to you two. Like if we have an agreement that I'm going to tell you all the sexual details, that's
Did you ask
your metamor, my partner, if that's okay to share that information?
Yeah, sure,
I think that's really good, important. So
yeah,
thanks, Hope, for saying that.
Exactly. Great thing. Because yes, you can grant your own consent, but you cannot grant the consent of others.
Yeah. Yeah, because some people really find that hot. They want to know the details because if you're in what's another term, a cuckold situation.
Right. What's that?
Oh, a cuckold is when how do you describe it? Can you describe it?
Well, it's like pretty much like what it sounds like. The cock is held, hold, right?
Yeah.
So it's restriction of certain demonstrations.
Yeah.
In an agreed.
But it's not necessarily a male presenting. Oh yes, no, there's a different name for when it's the female side. I'm forgetting it. See, this is the thing with terms. Even I think we forget them too.
For sure, yeah. But a cuckold is it's kind of like an agreement between that couple that the person with the penis will be restricted and not participate in certain things, while the wife, possibly a hot wife, will go out and do these demonstrations,
or forced to watch, withheld from having orgasm. Like there's all kinds of things.
Yeah, different degrees, absolutely.
But some people want to know about the juicy details of the other person's because it makes their interaction awesome. So I come back from a sexy date with someone, I'm like, yeah, he fucked me, like whatever it was,
right.
And then I come back to you and I tell you, and you're like, yeah, and then we have it.
Exactly.
Like some people like that situation. Sure. But again, the consent is super important. So that's intimate and sexual details. So then the other thing that you might want to know or share is around sexual health. Yes. So one of the things that we ask our partners, and that is around STI, sexual transmitted infection testing, and recent activity, I'd say, and how they practice sexual health. Use of barriers like condoms and dams and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I was speaking to this very subject with a client of mine, this young man, and he is starting to date, and he's saying that when that subject comes up, he finds it kind of awkward to, where does he introduce this idea about STI testing? He's all for it, but he doesn't want to appear as though he has this big, history where it's going to be perceived as, why are you bringing this up kind of deal? And it feels awkward to him. And all I could say to him is that the more you bring it up, the more familiar you are with it, the more acquainted you are with it, the more comfortable you might feel. And if you feel more comfortable, then it might make it more accessible for them as well. So now it's said in a very matter-of-fact kind of way. But I remember when I first started asking people about it, it also seemed like, well, where do I insert this part of the conversation? Because it's important to me. I want to talk about it. And it's important to me for myself, for themselves, for my relationship with you, and then for us as a community.
Yeah.
Because it affects all of us. So it's critically important that we do bring this up, and please go at it. If you feel awkward about it, it will get easier as you participate more and more in this, having these open dialogues about it.
Yeah. And we, I love that, Hope. I'm going to put that up on the screen. discussing safer sex is loving to the entire group. Exactly. So if you see it as a loving gesture, then maybe it would be easier to share that information.
Yeah, we're all participants in this community, and it's our responsibility to look out for each other and ourselves and each other.
Exactly. And so we've done a couple of videos on this whole topic in the group. So if you're new to open relating, open relationships, swinging, polyamory, then you might want to check those out to just inform you about what's out there. So
next would be the knowing the who.
The who, yeah. So how much do you know? We did talk a bit about that. Who they are? Do we want to meet them? The phone number we mentioned.
Wanting to meet them, for me right away, it makes me think of motive. So am I wanting to meet them because I want to fuel my jealousies and I want to see what's going on, or it's just like I'm driven by that, or do I want to meet them or know them because I want to make sure that you are in good company and that you are safe? And is that really my responsibility? Is that really my thing to say? If you feel as though they are that way, should I assume, well, you seem like an intelligent person, I take it that you're able to get out of the rain if necessary. So it's interesting, right? Like, I mean, where's the motive in that?
Well, and some people, I think, just want to meet the loves of their loves. You know what I mean? They want to hang out and want to appreciate them and thank them for being a good partner to their partner.
But you have to also recognize that the other person may not want to have a similar, or it might go the opposite way. Your metamor might want to meet you, and you might be like, you know what, I'm not really wanting to meet this person. Like, why do they want to meet me? They're interested in my partner.
We've met quite a few of our
we sure have.
partners.
And have met some wonderful people, made some great connections like that as well. So it's very cool.
Yeah. So that's all the sort of the details. There's probably more things we've missed. So then what do you want to see? We did talk a bit about this around like if you are in more of a lifestyle swinging situation, if you're doing monogamish and doing group activities together, like how comfortable are you seeing your partner interact with others?
Right. It's so interesting when people are first going at it, or even later on, they may say, well, we're going to go to this event and we can basically do X, Y, and Z as long as we're together. And other people are like, we're going to this event, we can do X, Y, and Z, but I don't want to see you go in that room, I'll go in that room. And then, so communication.
Yeah. And people have check-ins, I don't know, like what do we do when we go? We haven't been to a club or something like that in a long time. Do we stick together? Or we kind of do our own thing?
I think we pretty much stick together.
Yeah, we stick together. Some people really stick together.
Hands.
I think
more hands.
People really stick together though. Like they're like, they have to be touching. Some people have to be touching on the same bed, that sort of thing. But these are all the things you want to communicate, talk about beforehand. I think
it's interesting though. I wonder if we could look back and think if it's changed for us, how it's changed, and is there any correlation between how it's changed and our level of security, our security in a relationship? Do I feel secure? So if in the beginning we go out and I'm wanting to touch you, is that necessarily an indication that I want to feel secure? Like, okay, like I see we're here together. Whereas if I'm wanting to go separately, does that indicate, well, I feel okay and I'll go that way?
Yeah.
I don't know if there is a correlation, but I think there might be.
Yeah, I think we've had experiences in the past. We talked about where we were engaged in some group activity, and then I think you were feeling a little uncomfortable and stepped away. And then I was like, oh shit, like where did he go, sort of thing. And I think I went to go look for you because we hadn't, we were learning too. You know what I mean? This is why, part of what we do in our group program is allow the opportunity to talk about these things. Because I think, we made some faux pas along the way and have learned a lot of things. But
I was lucky that you were very tuned to me and you sought me out, but it might not have happened that way. And I could have gone and found all the evidence to support my negative feelings, right? But going through this program, talking about these things, we can anticipate, we can forecast, we can explore these things before they even ever happen. And then say, well, what would it be like if this were to happen? How do you imagine you might feel? What would come up for you? And that way it might save a lot of heartache and distress. So it's good to know.
Yeah, I think when we started, I probably wanted to kind of see where you were or be close by, partly because I kind of wanted to feel that comfort, because I might have been like, I think in those spaces I wasn't always comfortable. But the other part was I loved being near you because we always had a lot of fun and playfulness together. So I liked you being close so I could watch and experience and participate and get excited about that. Now I'm sort of like, still, I love all those things, but I'm also more comfortable. I've grown security around you doing activities on your own, even in a big group space. The only thing I might suffer from is some FOMO, some fear of missing out. That would be about it. It's like, ooh, we must be having some fun things. So that's the what do you want to see. So now then there's the feeling side of things. We talked about the details, and now it's the feelings.
The NRE.
So NRE is one of them.
What's
so NRE is another term, new relationship energy.
And what does that mean?
It's a term used to describe that butterfly, exciting feeling when you first meet someone.
So we've been together for 6,000 years, and I'm still happy to see you. But then this new person, this new couple comes on a relationship, and I'm like, wow, I get excited by them.
Like new shiny thing.
Right. And you see my enchantment with them, and you're like, wow, I used to get that. He used to get excited for me.
Yeah, he mustn't, and then you might tell yourself the story. He mustn't love me as much. He might not be interested in being with me, and that might take something away from me. These are the common, I think, stories that people come up with.
And that might not be the case at all.
No, it's like you being happy and experiencing things does not take away from me. Right. I don't believe.
No, I don't think so either.
But it is hard to deal with sometimes.
Yeah, but the NRE reminds me of what's called the honeymoon phase, right? Which, we've studied in psychology to say that it usually lasts about 18 months. And there are new changes, new experiences that are coming back that are bring up these other feelings. And that as we become more familiar, more secure, more acquainted with the other person, they may be less likely to appear. But it's not to say that it's diminishment of our feelings towards each other.
Exactly. And new relationship energy also doesn't have to mean that it's reserved for that experience with that new person. A lot of people find that it helps bring and enliven things in your longer term relationships. Absolutely. I tried this new thing, or experienced this new thing, or went to this new restaurant, or whatever it is, that sort of thing. And I think that's kind of exciting and interesting and that sort of thing.
So another couple I was working with, they've been together for some time. They have a couple of kids together and yada, yada, yada. And he said, well, I like the fact that she's meeting new people and she gets that outside validation. Because I tell her all the time how I find her beautiful and lovely and all this. And she knows that. But there's something different when it comes from another person outside. And it makes her feel like, wow, I'm still attracted to others. Well, of course he loves me. We're together. So there is that benefit of that NRE coming in that way. And they had a very secure way of looking at this. It was beautiful.
Yeah, you feel good about yourself. It's like that nice buzzy energy, and it's different, but it's good.
Yeah.
I had another thought about that, and now it's completely
There's
forgotten.
Always more to say.
There's always more to say. And then there's the emotional connections that we have with partners. Like some people do fall in love with their new partners.
For sure. I would imagine that quite a few of your partners fall in love with you. You're very adorable.
Oh, I do remember what I was going to say about new relationship. Oh, I just forgot it again. Damn it. No, it's super important.
Where's the pause button on this thing?
Pause.
All right. So it'll come back to you.
But it's going to come back. It came back while I was talking about something else, and then I forgot it again.
We were talking about new relationship energy and people falling in love, or metamorphs falling in love with us, or with our partners.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Damn, so it was a really good
next thing on
point.
It
reminded me of something I was talking with somebody about. Oh, I know. When you're in a long-term relationship, and then you meet someone else that's new, one of the things that I think people, it's hard to balance, or that may make that other relationship seem so interesting, is because you can take on a new persona or a different thing. So you may be a mom with 3 kids or whatever, responsible for, full-time job, responsible for, or a father, you know what I mean? You have all these responsibilities about being a parent or a partner, like a married partner. And then when you meet somebody else, you can take yourself out of that position and be someone completely different and new.
The perfect stranger.
Yeah. So,
right?
You could be something else and you can forget all those things. So I think sometimes people get really wrapped into the new relationship energy. And I think the downside of it, if we need to present a downside or something to be aware of, I guess, is that you may be it doesn't say something about your relationship. It's just something to look at in terms of who you are as a person and understanding what it is about that relationship and how you can bring that back into your, into your other relationship. And, it's about your identity. Someone's asking if we're kitchen table. Are we kitchen table, would you say?
I think it fluctuates. I think it changes over time. And I think that's a big part of being this way. But even outside of being ethically open or polyamorous, we are plastic as human beings. We change over time. A lot of the essence of us, the core issues often remain intact, but we do fluctuate over time. I see that in my own sexual identity, my own sexual expression, and my styles of relating. So I think at times we might have been kitchen table, at times we are, and at other times we're less so.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Yeah, I'd say we're a combination. It depends on who we're with and how much they want to be part of the kitchen table. So for people who are new and don't know what kitchen table polyamory is, it's when basically everybody knows everybody. You can sit around a table having a discussion and everyone's comfortable and consenting and that sort of thing. Yeah. It's less. It's probably the farthest end of don't ask, don't tell. I think it's just different. They're hard to compare. Yeah. I'd say, but
there's an openness to it, right? Everybody's welcome to have a seat at the table and feel valid and recognized. Yeah.
And so
good to bring that up.
Yeah. So the other thing we wanted to say, and I think we already talked about it a bit, is there like a glossary?
There is actually. We did put together a glossary, and in the guides we started with the letter A. We didn't cover every term because there's just so many. We went from A to Z, talking about many terms that you would find in open relating and polyamory.
Yes, so we have videos, A to Z, on all kinds of topics. That was really fun. We should do. That was a really fun.
I think we should do that again.
But we did talk about privacy, and that's the other thing to consider about what to share.
Yours and theirs,
and your other partners, that sort of thing.
Yeah, good consent.
And we had so many great comments in the group. We're so thankful to you for engaging in the conversation. It always makes it interesting, and it was awesome for us in preparing for this. So I think we should do that more. Is ask a question before our lives.
Absolutely. But I think also what I love most about it, not only the response, is that it really gives me that feeling of why we started this, to have a community where people could come together and talk about these things and take away any kind of embarrassment towards it or feeling as though it has to be underground or hidden or all these things, that we come out and we speak openly about it, well, fairly openly, and normalize it and make it accessible.
Exactly.
Yeah. So your way of relating is valid.
Exactly. So I wanted to share, I would love to share all of them, but if you haven't seen them, just look in the group. But a couple of them that we want to share because they have differing opinions. Jay Scott was talking about it being a tricky situation in some people. It can bring people closer or push them further apart. Knowing your limit is essential, and learning the limits change over time as we grow. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's very good. Pete from Scarborough, or Pete Scarborough?
Pete Scarborough, maybe he's from Scarborough. As little or as much as what they want to share. If I'm your partner, I'm also your best friend. So whatever is appropriate to share with your besties can be shared with me.
That's a great idea. However, thank you. No, but I wonder though if the emotional investment level is different. If you're my best friend or if you're my partner, it might be different, or maybe not.
It could be. I think it depends on the person, but that's a really good point.
Yeah,
sure.
But it's a good comment. And Sharon,
I love what Sharon said. She said it sometimes feel like being in the middle of a score of interesting stories, which is so true. So in that regard, she said, I tend to be compelled, but in general, I really only care if my partner is content and being treated well. So that's a thing. I think that's a great premise to think about, is like being happy for your partner being treated well. I try to focus more on the time I'm spending with them rather than what they're doing outside of our time.
Right.
So then that brings up an interesting point about being treated well.
Yeah.
Because we've definitely heard some things, and I think this is where people, so much tea to spill. That's funny. I think this is one thing that comes up is like, what if you feel like I'm not being treated well?
As your partner. So if my metamor is not treating you well, if somebody that you're with is not treating you well, that would, I think, concern me and make me want to really find out, how can we make you feel better, more secure, whatever it is that's making you not feel well, how can we address that? And, is there anything we can do, or how might you feel empowered to affect the change otherwise? It's about open relating, and it's about having many loves, polyamory, many loves. And I hope that everybody you're with, you're loving them and they're loving you. And if you're not, then I would be saddened by that. I'd be maybe concerned. So I'm hoping that you're loved and loving those people.
Yeah. So I think if you feel that your partner isn't being treated well by someone, that's where you have to have like one of those tough conversations and how you bring it up with them. We have video on that too, but that would be a really tough one. It's like, and then what is making you feel that way is also interesting. Is it that you are, you have to sort of check yourself at the door. Am I saying that because I'm jealous or they're doing something that I'm not? So, yeah. So just to summarize, because wow, we've talked a long time.
Our producers are giving us the
I was going to share some more comments because there
there's
such
a
good
lot
ones.
of great comments. Yeah, for sure. They
So
should
read
go in and
them,
yeah.
because I think there's lots of really good perspectives, and it shows that we're all really different, and we all have different needs in terms of what we want to know and what we want to share. But I think the bottom line is that we need to communicate with our partners, and it's a balance about what's best for everybody involved. So we might not want to necessarily hear or share intimate or sexual or emotional details with our partners, but we should be open to communicating how we feel, if we're feeling safe.
Find out what our level of interest is in any of those things and what we're not wanting. Absolutely. Someone's asking about being polysaturated. It's not a question of like polyfats. It's meaning that you have too many things on your calendar, right? You're polysaturated, and that wanting to meet all these incredible people, but you will have to decide how you're going to split your 24 hours. Yeah, it's tempting. You might come to it and say, wow, I'm at the buffet and there's so many great dishes. I want to try them all. It might not be quite realistically viable to do so. So you'll have to determine which ones are going to get prioritized.
Yeah, and you have to, time is, while love is limitless, I think time isn't.
Yeah.
And it's how you spend your time and how, if you do have other relationships, ensuring that if you feel that you're not having quality time, or if someone's expressing to you that they don't feel like there's quality time, then I think that's where you have to take a look at, are you really polysaturated?
Right.
How much are you trying to squeeze in a week, and are other things suffering as a result?
Yeah, that's a good point. Are other things suffering as a point because you want to go at it, perhaps? But it's so interesting as you add more and more variables, right? I mean, if we have kids and then you and I just trying to plan a date, now bring in another person, is their schedule going to fit? Now bring in a couple, and then bring in a group, and it's you can be very quickly polysaturated.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why, for me, my involvement with people ebbs and flows over time in terms of what I'm willing to be doing and what I don't want to do, and how much time I want to spend on all the things, right?
And because it ebbs and flows, because it changes, it's why it's so critically important that we continue to communicate openly, because we will change. So what I might have wanted in the past may not be the same thing going forward. Right?
Exactly. So all comes down to communication. We haven't said that. I mean, we said it today a lot, but like communication. So like I said, when we were talking in our group program, that's why in Polyamory Mastery, the very first thing we talk about is, and you'll practice, is how to communicate.
Yeah.
So you can have these types of conversations and so many more. So for those that are interested, like I said, you can message us and we can tell you a bit more about it. But it's about starting to, stop arguing and start spending and talking and listening to each other. Feel safe in your relationships, because I think sometimes people don't feel so safe. Learn how to be secure. Create relationship agreements that work. And then I find this with some of my clients that I work with, the couples and individuals, is they sometimes feel that these conversations and developing their relationship fills the room, and how to have that balance between working on your relationship and also having fun and being thankful.
Yeah.
So that's Polyamory Mastery. And if you want to know about it, let us know. We hope this topic was informative to you. And
Awesome.
Anything else you'd like to say?
Share the love.
Bye.
If you want to explore polyamory, open up a relationship, or try your hand at swinging, we can help. Check out our website at taranandre.com for information on our Poly Newbies digital course or our deeper dive open relationship and polyamory mastery program, where you get direct coaching from us. There's also other individual and couples coaching options there as well. Thanks for listening to the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast with TNA. Don't forget to subscribe and give us some love on your favorite podcasting platform. You can check out the show notes for any of the links to the courses or information we talked about today. Thanks, and have a fantastic and sexy day.